GM, welcome friends back to another episode of the Web3 Academy podcast, where we help guide entrepreneurs, creators, and businesses into Web3. In this episode, we are discussing, are NFTs a sustainable business model for creators, tokenizing communities? Now, this is a three-part series. We are going deep into this. Now, I'm Kyle Reidhead, the co-host of the Web3 Academy podcast. And we also run an agency which works with large audiences, large communities, and helps them monetize, previously, though, in the Web 2 world. And so we have a lot of experience and understanding in this space. And so watching this form in the Web 3 world, which has become very, very popular in terms of tokenizing audiences, tokenizing communities, I've been questioning, how does this actually work? What is the best business model for creators? And that's why I decided to do this deep dive here. I wanted to brain dump everything in my mind and really figure out what is the best strategy for creators trying to tokenize a community with NFTs, or does that even make sense? Maybe we don't use NFTs for this, right? I want to question everything we're doing in 2020 and 2021 and see what really makes sense here. And so that's the purpose of this series. Okay. Now, again, this is the first article. I'm going to be reading the first article. This is an episode on the podcast, but we are going to have two others over the next 2 weeks that are not just going to dive into the existing business model, but we're going to look into potential other business models, as well as how to work alongside or with your community and how those dynamics kind of play out. So there is a lot to unpack here. We are going to go very deep. I'm very excited to share this with you because I think it's one of our greatest pieces of content so far. And actually our goal at Web3 Academy is to create more really in-depth deep dives where we can start to create playbooks for entrepreneurs, for creators, for businesses to understand how to do this stuff in their own business, rather than just sort of think about or watch what's happening in the industry. Let's actually figure out what works here and let's create a playbook. And so that's the purpose of this episode. Now, before I dive into it, I'm just going to save a few seconds here to go and listen to our sponsors. So have a listen, and then I will see you back in here and we're going to go deep. The future of social media is here, and that future lives in Web3 on top of Lens protocol. Web2 social platforms are broken and ripe for disruption. You see, the epicenter of social media is the creators, and yet they are the most neglected. Web2 platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram are all essentially robbing creators of their worth. Creators are a new type of entrepreneur, forming new types of businesses. Yet with Web2 platforms, creators don't own their content or their profiles, and that's their product and business. Instead, they are tied to the platforms they choose to create on. Well, just like how crypto is freeing us from banks, Web3 is freeing us from these centralized platforms. On Lens Protocol, creators own their content, own their profile, and even their social graph and followers in the form of NFTs. This allows you to move freely from one social application to another with your content, profile, and followers moving along with you. Lens Protocol enables self-sovereignty for your social graph and interoperability across the internet. At Web3 Academy, we believe this is the future of social, and that's why we partner with Lens to ensure that the path of social media is heading in the right direction. Visit lens.xyz to learn more today. Okay, friends, welcome back. 10,000 token holders. That's the goal of most Web3 communities so far, right? Now, to be clear, 10,000 is an arbitrary number, and it can be any number, to be completely honest. What I really mean here is that many creators with audiences have been experimenting with launching a collection of NFTs, usually 10,000, which is why I say that, to form an active and exclusive community. This is a new Web3 type of product, which isn't possible in the Web2 world. Usually these NFTs are in the form of a PFP or a profile picture, like Bored Ape Yacht Club or Moonbirds, right? Something that you can go and put as your Twitter profile picture or whatever and kind of brand yourself. However, it's not necessary. Okay, there are other creators like Zen Academy, who we've had in the podcast, and Jump, which we've also had in the podcast, who went without the PFP, and they simply use the NFT as an access token. Remember, NFTs are not about the image. They're just about the interoperability standard that it creates and the ownership of that interoperability, okay? So I'm actually showing, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the NFT of Zen Academy is actually just basically like a white paper or a letter to his members. It is not something you would put as your Twitter profile picture or anything like that. There are no apes here. But regardless of the image, I continue to wonder if using a collection of NFTs is really a sustainable business model for creators, building audiences and communities. The reason for tokenizing a community seems pretty exciting at first glance. Use NFTs to provide ownership and to share in the community's value with your members, or your customers, you can also call them. This turns your passive audience into active contributors. Rather than building alone, this new primitive enables you to build together as a community and share in the upside. But I'm not sold on the fact that this is actually a good move for most creators. In fact, we asked Zeneca from Zen Academy, who's an NFT thought leader and has a big project himself. We asked him on the Web3 Academy podcast about a month ago, and he was unsure of how sustainable the NFT model is himself. And so you can listen to that podcast with Zeneca. It's a few episodes back. Just go scroll down, you'll find it. But that's why I'm going to deep dive with this series of articles, okay? I want to think through this topic and write the playbook on a sustainable business model for tokenizing communities, if that even exists. Now, there are two main questions I want to answer here in this episode. One, what's the sustainable business model for creators who want to tokenize their existing audience or community with NFTs? So to be clear, I'm talking about content creators who establish an audience or community in a specific niche. Okay, there are many ways to use NFTs. This is not the solution for all of the different ways. I'm talking specifically for content creators with audiences or an existing community. You can think of it like the Bankless of the DeFi world, or Tim Ferriss of the productivity world, or Tony Robbins of self-development. These are content creators in a specific niche who have an audience. And what's really happening, the trend we're seeing is many of these audiences are beginning, or many of these creators are beginning to tokenize their communities, okay? And I want to talk about that playbook specifically. And then number two, does tokenizing your community even make sense if your token holders don't also build something which generates revenue and real value? That's the thing that I think a lot of people are missing here. So buckle up, friends. We're going to go deep on this one. So let's talk about the current NFT community playbook in Web3. Typically what we see is you launch a collection of NFTs to your audience or existing community. Then you provide access to a token-gated social platform, i.e. a Discord, and then potentially attach some other forms of value along with it, okay? Exclusive events, premium content, discounts, merch, whatever that may be. Now, from an initial standpoint, it seems that many collections over the last 2 years were able to generate some fairly large sums of money on launch. Zen Academy, for example, raised 1.2 million from their sold-out Genesis collection and 1.5 from their second token that they launched. Moonbirds raised 66 million on their mint, crossing 100 ETH on secondary trading volume not long after. And VFriends raised 51 million in the first week with an extra 40 million from secondary sales. So the numbers here are massive, right? And this is sort of like an initial fundraise, I guess, or an initial capital raise. However, it's really yet to be seen if these types of numbers will continue or if that was simply a byproduct of the NFT speculative mania of 2021. And to be honest, I'm leading towards the latter because we're not seeing these kind of numbers here in 2022. And also, I mean, VFriends, Moonbirds, these are massive, massive celebrities who are launching these. So their audiences are in the millions, whereas most content creators are not there. So you should not expect that you're going to earn over $1 million on a mint of your NFT. Okay. To me, those are just ridiculous expectations and not part of the playbook moving forward. I mean, Zen Academy raised a little over $1 million, which is pretty incredible. He has about 200 and some odd thousand, I believe, on Twitter now, specifically in this space. So it's very niche, but also like an ideal person for this. Whereas other audiences and creators, they might not have Web3 native people like Zen did. So regardless, the next step, though, is deciding what creators will do with those initial funds from their NFT mint, right? The way I see it, they kind of have three options. They can take those funds as profits for their past effort of building the audience or community, okay? They can use the funds to build something of value for the NFT holders. This is kind of the Moonbird style, like building a metaverse or a game or movie, VFriends doing the same. Or they can share the profits with their token holders by funding a treasury so that the community can use it to build something together. This is what Zen Academy has actually done with their token holders. And this is something I really like because this at least gives your community something to use and kind of move forward with. So it's also possible to choose a combination of the three. But again, this assumes that you earn a large sum of money at launch. But more importantly, I keep wondering what happens afterwards. how does the business continue to generate revenue after launch? Is the idea to rely on NFT royalties? I did mention some pretty big numbers here with Moonbirds and VFriends on that. Um, do you need to launch a second token? I mean, that's what we've seen with Zen Academy. Or do you incorporate the Web2 way of monetizing community via memberships and subscriptions? And I will go into detail on what that looks like in just a second. Or is the idea that after launch, the creator who built this audience and started the community is no longer earning additional revenue to their business? They have essentially seeded their business over to their token holders to create products or services together, which in turn generates revenue and increases the value of the initial NFT. So as I mentioned, I've spent the better part of 10 years monetizing digital audiences and communities in Web2. So I'm struggling to see how the existing Web3 playbook provides a better business model for creators, unless your community builds something of extreme value. But I think people are underestimating how difficult that actually is, especially with a group of, let's say, 10,000 strangers from all around the world, right? Just so we're all on the same page, though, let's start this deep dive looking into how we've monetized audiences and communities in Web 2. Then we'll break down potential monetization strategies for tokenized communities in Web 3. So I really want to be able to compare from the existing or older way into what we're doing now in Web 3 and see if it even actually makes sense. So the playbook to monetize digital communities in Web 2. In the Web 2 world, we've created sustainable, scalable, and extremely profitable business models around communities via memberships and subscriptions. I would imagine many of you listening to this are a part of some of these memberships or subscriptions already. This business has been booming for years and is showing no signs of slowing down. Web3 may even take this industry to a whole other level. Let's see. The Web2 playbook, though, is fairly simple. You build an audience through social or other media platforms. This could be newsletter, podcast, whatever else. Then you convert those true fans of that audience into a paywalled subscription product. This could be a private community, it could be a premium newsletter, it could be a paywalled application. The list goes on what you could actually give. And the ideal here is you charge a monthly or yearly reoccurring fee for customers to remain part of the product and community. So long as you provide enough value in your paywalled product, your customers tend to stick around with a fairly high retention rate, and your business will continue to grow. The beautiful thing about this business model is there's little additional work or cost required for each new paying customer, aside from a marginal increase in customer support and SaaS fees to run your product. But whether you have 100 customers or 10,000, the work and costs increase much slower than revenue does. So you can see why so many creators choose this route. And again, you're probably part of these, whether they have courses, they have communities, they have newsletters. This is a great business model that's scalable for sort of everyone here. And so creators monetizing digital communities can earn tens, hundreds, even millions of dollars per month with this model. We've seen it many times. And the key is, so long as they continue to remain relevant, okay, so they continue to innovate, they produce valuable content, then this can continue to grow over time. The benefit here, especially to the customer, is that this scalability enables subscription costs to be quite minimal, with most subscriptions ranging from $7 to $50 a month, or $70 to $500 a year. Though it is not unusual to see some like high quality products for $100 a month or even thousands of dollars a year. But it's important to note to make a point here that this is kind of bordering the line of monetizing an audience versus an actual community. Okay, there is a clear difference here, right? So let's think an audience, which is kind of a one-to-many relationship where the many listen and the one speaks. This is what enables this sort of scalable product. Community, which is a bit different, is many-to-many relationships where voices are heard amongst the members, and the focus on helping the community and relies on member contribution. So it is a different beast, I would say. But typically, I think the idea here is that when we're tokenizing our audiences, the goal is turning them into a community, right? So it is a little bit different here. But this type of product, so the Web2 model I'm talking about, where it's a subscription-based, typically relies heavily on the creator to continue to create and provide value, right? In return, you can continue to reap the benefits and take 100% of the profit. The problem here is that you're not truly tapping into the power and potential of your community. Try getting your community to build a product or service that furthers your mission while you continue to take 100% of the profit. You'll fall flat. It's not going to work. There's no incentive for your community to contribute rather than simply consume. That is what Web3 unlocks. That's what's kind of so exciting here. And so using NFTs or fungible tokens to provide ownership to your community immediately converts them into an active contributor. And so this is really where the magic of Web3 exists. But how does the creator do this without simply giving away their existing business and all their hard-earned work to the community? How can you empower and incentivize the community while still holding on to what you've built? Is it possible, or are we trying to do, as the saying goes, have our cake and eat it too? The thing that I think NFT holders and the people part of the community need to understand is, let's not forget that after launching this NFT, the creator still needs to move forward with business as usual, continue to create content, etc. Just because you launch an NFT doesn't mean that all of a sudden 10,000 people will know exactly what to do and how to take your business to the next level. In fact, it's more likely the opposite is true, right? So you can't just give away your entire business to this community and just hope it works, right? It's hard enough to build a business as is. Now just go, here, it's put in the hands of 10,000 people. Let's make it work. Your chances are even slimmer of this working. So that's the main thing I need people to understand here, of when we try to figure out, does this Web3 model actually make sense? And if it doesn't, creators aren't going to go this route anymore. They're going to stick to the Web2 models. And then that doesn't bring adoption into Web3 tokenizing communities. So this is why I'm questioning, because we need to figure out the model that makes sense, one, for the customer, of course. And I know customers love this ownership aspect. But if it doesn't make sense for the creator, they're never going to do it, right? So we need to find that winning playbook that allows for both to see benefit here. So before we get into the advantages and disadvantages associated with working with such a large community, let's start with exploring the ways in which the original creator could tokenize their community while continuing to earn their own revenue, right? The creator needs this to continue to live and survive and run their business. And then after that, we'll dive into if it's better to just give away all or share that revenue with your community. So the current business models of NFT tokenized communities. Now, the playbook for monetizing communities via NFTs is fairly similar to how I just explained it in Web 2. The main difference here being that we remove the membership model and exchange it for a one-time purchase of an NFT to access the community. So in this model, of course, as I mentioned, history has shown it's possible to earn a large sum of money up front at launch. But if you sold all the NFTs in your collection at launch, the question then becomes, well, how do you generate future revenues for the business? Some might say NFT royalties from secondary sales, but this model seems counterintuitive to the mission of building a successful community. The entire purpose of building community is to create strong connections and relationships around a specific group of people. The better the community you build, the less likely your community members are going to sell their NFTs, and thus less revenue earned on royalties. So this model doesn't seem to make sense. That said, some NFT communities have actually earned a considerable amount of revenue on royalties over the last few years. But again, I question if this is just a byproduct of the speculative mania or 2021, or if this will continue long term. So not to mention, NFT royalties may not even be a viable solution regardless, as they can be circumvented fairly easy. You can learn more about this in our podcast episode and newsletter, Truth of NFT Royalties. This was a great one that kind of breaks down if this is even something that's enforceable. But for the purpose of this, let's assume that secondary sales via NFT royalties are enforceable, okay? Let's talk about that business model. NFT royalties as a business model for tokenized communities. If you have an audience of, let's say, 100,000 people, and you launch a 10,000 NFT collection to them, which sells out at, let's say, 0.1 ETH each, okay? And just for the purpose of this, let's assume ETH is at $2,000 USD. It's not right now, but let's hope it gets there soon. But let's just do this to make our math easy here. Okay, you would make $200 USD per NFT on your mint, okay? If you earned a total, so you earned a total of 1,000 ETH or $200,000 US at launch, and now you're planning to take 7.5% of every NFT sale moving forward. Now, 7.5% as a royalty is actually quite high, more on the higher end, but again, let's just use this as an example. If your NFT remains at $200, you will earn $15 per sale. So to earn $1,000 per month from a 10,000 person community, you would need 67 sales or trades, I guess, per month, or what you could call a 0.67% monthly turnover rate. Okay, bear with me here and stick with me. Turnover rate means the number of members leaving your community and selling their NFT versus the total community members of course, 10,000. So to earn $10,000 per month, you would need 667 sales a month or a 6.7 monthly turnover rate, 6.7%. Now, in comparison with the Web 2 subscription model mentioned above, we typically see a monthly turnover rate, so customers canceling their membership, range from like 3% for a great product to upwards of 10% for kind of like a decent product. Now, as mentioned, the model is more monetizing an audience than a community in the Web 2 world. With a community, though, when we tokenize it, we should expect a much lower turnover rate as connections should be stronger, and ownership and incentives via NFTs create that sort of stickiness factor. It's one of the reasons why you'd want to tokenize a community as a creator. So the real way to increase revenue here is to increase the value of the NFT itself, right? If the NFT appreciates to $2,000 rather than 200, for example, then you're now earning 150 per NFT sale rather than 15, right? So at a 0.67% monthly turnover rate, you just raise your monthly revenue from 1,000 to 10,000 while maintaining a low turnover rate. So what this shows is that in this scenario, the entrepreneur has, or the creator has two levers to pull on to grow the revenues. They can either provide more value to the community, making the existing audience more interested in purchasing the NFT, increasing the NFT price, right? You're now having more buyers than sellers. And so ideally that NFT price is going to go up. The other thing they can do is increase their audience size, right? So AKA, this is people who might be interested in purchasing an NFT in their collection. So even if the value inside that community doesn't go up, there's still people who want to buy that. You just need to find more of those people. Again, that comes from building your audience. So again, more demand with same supply typically means number goes up. And everyone has a price they are willing to sell at. So this assumes that as the price goes up, certain people will be willing to sell their NFT, even if they didn't want to previously. So growing your audience will just grow the amount of people who might want to purchase this NFT. But the next question is, what happens if you reach a point where you provide so much value and you build the strongest and most loyal community and really no one wants to sell, right? The result would be you likely hold an extremely valuable NFT, similar to a CryptoPunk or maybe a Bored Ape Yacht Club. But what happens to your royalties? Well, let's say your NFT appreciates to, I don't know, 20,000 or even 200,000. You would be earning 1,500 or 15,000 per sale. To put things into context, in the last 30 days, Bored Ape Yacht Club has had 161 sales in total. If we use those numbers for our example above, then you'd be earning a nice 241,000 per sale or 2.41 million per month. So, I mean, those numbers seem to be quite nice, of course, though there are a lot of assumptions being made here. So it's unlikely that this is actually how it plays out. Not to mention, it is extremely difficult to increase the value of your NFT to these levels. Currently, out of the millions of NFT collections in Web3, only 280 have a floor price above 1 ETH. So these numbers, I'm not sure how attainable they are, especially, I mean, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, the CryptoPunk numbers, I'm not sure many collections or many creators are going to reach that level anytime soon, especially in the certain market that we're in currently. So the other thing to note here is for your customers, at these prices, you're really limiting access to your community to a smaller subset of wealthy individuals only, right? For the most part, for me, this business model doesn't sit well. Here's a quick summary of sort of the pros and cons of this. And actually, just to dive deeper into the customer standpoint, in the Web 2 world, your customers are paying what, $20 a month? In here, for you to actually earn a good revenue, people need to buy these NFTs for thousands of dollars a month, or not a month, sorry, but thousands of dollars in one-time purchase. And so are people really going to do that? I mean, they did in 2020 and 2021, but you're really excluding a lot of people to get access to you, your content, or whatever your product is. Now, we'll talk about other ways that we can fix that, or we can continue to build other products around that. But let's just look at the pros and cons of this model. So potential to generate a large sum of money at launch for fundraising or to cover the opportunity loss of the reoccurring membership, right? And I think the great thing here is that your community is incentivized to help you build and generate value to the NFT, right? In the Web2 playbook, your community is not incentivized to build with you. Now, here's the cons. Your revenue stream relies on people leaving your community. The incentives between you and your community are not in line, and I don't ever see that as a good idea in business. So for this to be worth it, your product or your NFT needs to appreciate in price to a point that is going to exclude most of your community. And NFT royalties can be circumvented. So this is not an ideal revenue stream for your business to rely on, right? This was assuming that they can be enforced, but they can't, at least right now. So is this really the model you want to take your business to? I personally would not. So let's talk about some alternative business models for creators with NFT tokenized communities. NFT royalties are only one means whereby a creator can earn additional revenue where tokenizing their community. I would recommend that if you use or plan these royalties, treat them as just gravy for the business rather than relying on it for a sustainable business model. Thankfully, there are other options, which we'll explore in the next episode of this series. And yes, they are more promising as a business model for tokenizing communities than what we've covered today. These additional models will allow you to earn your fair share as a creator, while also aligning incentives with the community and enabling them to share in the upside with you. In these next episodes, we will also discuss the practicality and sustainability of building with your tokenized community. Friends, thank you so much for listening here. I hope that this was valuable to you. I know you probably want to hear the rest of it, but it's already getting quite long. So we're going to split this up into a series of 3. But we have a lot more to share here, a lot more to dive into. But this gives you a nice foundational understanding of the current business model of tokenizing NFT communities, and how that compares to sort of the Web 2 world. And as a creator, what you should be thinking about. Hopefully this has kind of opened your mind into thinking about things a little bit differently, understanding how these models are actually going to play out. So very interesting topic. Again, we're still in sort of experimentation mode in all of this. That's why I'm trying to pick at it and kind of develop the next steps playbook and innovate here. But if you guys have any comments, concerns, or feedback here, then please head to Twitter and just comment on one of our posts on this, or reply to the email if you've received the newsletter. Let us know your thoughts, because again, we are just exploring and we want to help share that, but we want to learn from our community, learn from our audience as well. So please help us to continue to think through this. But friends, thank you so much for listening, and please follow and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever it is you are listening. I will see you all next week, where we will dive deeper. Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.